top of the points race. The old guns have experience on this tricky mile oval. But the young guns are ready to charge into battle. And the fastest guy wins the shootout. The look is live from over the Estrella Mountains at the edge of the Valley of the Sun. We're ready for the IndyCars in the Phoenix 200, presented by Pyroil. And in qualifying here, Bryan Herta yesterday, the best qualifying position he'd ever had was 7th, but he has the pole here today. More on that now as we go to the starting field and Jackaroo.
Well, Paul, it was only 8 months ago that this young man was in a hospital bed, and many people questioned whether he would ever walk again, let alone drive. But Bryan Herta teamed up with Chip Ganassi Racing for this season, along with the legendary Mo Nunn, and after some trouble on the road racing facilities, they've come with a vengeance to the oval. His first career pole, as you said. But the man directly behind him, Jacques Villeneuve, who has been so strong for Team Green, Gary Gerould. Villeneuve knows that the package that was used in qualifying is not the same one that Ganassi Racing will use in the race.
Significant story, Jack. Bryan Herta and the Newman Haas drivers, Paul Tracy, Michael Andretti, have been using this weekend in testing and qualifying a new generation Ford power plant. It's new from the block up, and it's given them great results. They've qualified in 3 of the top 5 positions, but the folks at Ford say they're not yet ready to put it into racing competition. That's still down the road. So these drivers, the 3 of them, are using the power plants that they used in Miami and Australia. One other quick wrinkle for the Newman Haas team. Right under this cover, they've got a new sculpted oval track nose, giving them more downforce, less drag. They've spent upward of $200,000 on this project. Paul?
So many stories already here at Phoenix, Arizona. In fact, this morning in warm-ups, Stefan Johansson caught the wall coming off of 4, but they're going to put his backup car in the show. He'll start in his qualified position. Yesterday in qualifying, 18 cars underneath the track record, 21 cars grouped in the same second. So we expect some great action when we get the race underway here today. And remember, many people think that what happens at Phoenix can help predict the Indy 500. Last year, Emerson Fittipaldi won here, almost won an Indy. Let's go back to pit road once again, and Jack.
Paul, talking about that, the fact that Firestone Tire and Rubber Company last appeared at Phoenix back in 1974 until this year. They're gearing towards the Indianapolis 500. This race so critical for their development because it's the first of 2 oval races before the May Classic. The test pilot all last year at Patrick Racing, well, it's the youngster Scott Pruitt. Thus far this year, a 4th, a 3rd. He's looking for 2nd or 1st today. It's so important in proving this package. Gary Gerould, another team trying to prove a package, is to the head of the grid for the first time.
And Jack, that's Team Penske. For the first time this year, they're in the front row. Emerson Fittipaldi right alongside Bryan Herta. Remember, he's the defending champion. His teammate, however, Al Unser Jr., had problems as he popped the valve in both qualifying laps yesterday. He is back in 17th, but only 0.6 of a second off the pace in this very tight field. That prompts the question for the 2 former drivers in our booth, Sam Posey and Bobby Unser. Just how important is qualifying position at this racetrack?
Well, Gary, other than the fact that you might have an accident right after the start, I really don't think qualifying here is going to be all that important. For example, I think that within 10 laps, you're going to see the back markers being passed by the faster guys. There is going to be passing all day long.
Well, it's lucky that passing is going to be easy because several of the main contenders have qualified poorly. Bobby Rahal, who leads the point chase coming into this race, is back in the 7th row. Robbie Gordon, who was fastest in winter practice and in practice this morning, is in the 5th row. And in the 4th row, way out of touch with the leaders when the race starts, is Raul Bosello. I think many people feel is overdue to win a race. Just how well these men can make their way through the field may very well be the story of the race today, Bobby.
How about this one, Sam? Average speed around this track, 181 plus miles an hour. Now that's faster than I used to go down the straightaway when I raced here the last time. Straightaway speeds, over 203 miles an hour we've seen. Now at speeds like this, you're going to see more action than you can ever believe.
It's going to be incredible.
Phoenix, Arizona, a real bull ring. It's going to be a great day. We'll come back with the grid and the green flag right after this. Back live at the Phoenix 200, presented by Pyroil. Let's take a look at the starting grid. Remember, Johansson had an accident at the start of the day, but he'll go in his qualified position. On the pole here, it's Bryan Herta. His first ever pole comes in only his 8th career start, alongside Emerson Fittipaldi. Last year, this race produced Emerson's only win of the season. In row 2, Jacques Villeneuve, the winner of the season opener in Miami, and Paul Tracy. Both of this year's winners are in row 2. Tracy won in Australia. In row 3, it's Michael Andretti. His lone win at Phoenix came back in 1986. And Scott Pruitt, with 2 top 4 finishes this year, he now lies 3rd in the point standing. In the 4th row is Jimmy Vasser, teammate to the pole sitter. His best ever finish came here at Phoenix. In 1993, it was a 3rd place. And Raul Boesel, 2 of his 2nd place finishes have come on 1-mile ovals. In the 5th row is Robbie Gordon, still looking for his first race finish of the season. And Gilles de Ferran, the fastest qualifier of those making their first ever oval start. In row 6, Mauricio Gugelmin. A great start to the season, find him 2nd in the points behind the leader, Bobby Rahal. Alongside is Adrian Fernandez, the 3rd-year driver, finished in the points in Miami. In row 7, it's Stefan Johansson and points leader Rahal. Row 8, Andre Ribeiro and Teo Fabi. The 9th row, Al Unser Jr. and Eddie Cheever. In row 10, it's Christian Fittipaldi and Arie Luyendyk back in an Indy car. The 11th row, Danny Sullivan and Dean Hall. In row 12, Alessio Salazar and Hiro Matsushita. In the 13th row, Roberto Guerrero, who still holds the race record here, and Eric Bachelard. And alone in the 14th row is Alessandro Zampedri. So that's the way they line up here at Phoenix, Arizona. They've already begun the parade laps here. And I'll tell you what, when this track turns them loose, it's spectacular. Let's take a look at the layout here. The race analysis, 200 laps, 200 miles, 1-mile oval. The race record here, incredibly fast, 138.05 miles an hour, held by Guerrero. Here's the way the track looks. Look at those straightaway speeds.
Yes, 203 down the straightaway, almost 200 in the back straightaway, including the dog leg. 2 turns, the first one, 162 miles an hour. Look at that, the other one, 180. That's almost wide open.
Breakdown on today's field, chassis, engines, and tires, all 3 becoming so very, very important. So now we should see them line up behind the PPG pace car, Johnny Rutherford at the wheel. And there is your pole sitter, Bryan Herta, inside the front row. You'll watch over his shoulder today. The start here, so very, very critical. They're bunched up, and as Bobby suggested, almost instantly is the front of the field on top of the back rows. It doesn't take very many laps. Emerson Fittipaldi alongside in the front row now slides into position as they move into turn 3. Tracy Villeneuve in the 2nd row. They're picking up the pace as they come off of the 4th turn. Pace car heads for the pit area. Herta leads him to the green, and here we go. Paul Tracy sweeps down to the inside. Tries to get underneath Fittipaldi, can't do it. Villeneuve now moving very high, almost gets up into the wall as they come off the corner.
Well, that was a close one right there, Paul. That was dangerously close.
Remember, this is Herta's 8th IndyCar race, only his 8th, and he's taken the lead off the pole.
This is the first lap that Herta has ever led in the Indy cars. Now Tracy makes his move on Fittipaldi. Tracy into 2nd. Here comes Michael on the inside of Fittipaldi. And Michael's alongside.
The whole idea with trying to be in front early like this is to run in clean air. There's a lot of wind disturbance from all the cars. It's like running in like a tornado back there right now.
So 2 laps complete. Fittipaldi has fallen 2 positions in those 2 laps. And now Jacques Villeneuve hides up behind him. Villeneuve's going to try to go to work on it.
This is the first time in this young season that Michael Andretti, who you see right there leading that group, has not been in the lead in the first laps of the race.
Bryan Herta, surprisingly enough, pulling away just a bit. Get back in the field, you're right now. This is a new view with Robbie Gordon.
It's like really over the engine compartment. Look forward there, and the first thing you'll see is what looks like 2 wings. Those really are our camera positions on that car. So you look at that little blue thing right up in the middle. That's his head. That's the driver's head.
Gordon runs in 7th place. Scott Pruitt just ahead.
Yeah, we're already up to 7th. A terrific start for him. Exactly the kind of passing that we talked about.
Now that's the camera that's shaking like that, just so everybody knows the body's not really shaking.
That's Scott Pruitt right ahead of him in the Firestone shot car.
He tries a move on Pruitt, tries to get down. This is a critical passing area in turn 1 and 2. But Pruitt comes sliding across the front.
Now he told Pruitt right there what he's going to do the next time. So Scotty's going to be waiting for him and try to probably block him just enough.
Pruitt came off that corner a little better. Let's see if Gordon closes here.
Gordon was the fastest in all of the testing during the winter. He was fastest again in the warm-up this morning, as I said. Many people feel that he has the speed. He qualified badly, but he is a man to watch in this race. And he desperately needs to win a race. He's highly touted, but has yet to win.
Now he closes in. Pruitt just ahead. That's Villeneuve just ahead of Pruitt.
They're turning laps just over 7 or 20 seconds per lap. Now he's trying to work through it on the outside.
Oh, boy.
And look at him. He's going through the...
And he gets it. Did you hear a little squeal of the Goodyears, though, as he went past, though?
That's where you really have to take a deep breath. There's Villeneuve now in front of him.
That's a hard place to pass. I mean, really a hard place to pass. It's the fastest turn speed that there is on the whole track.
And when you hear those tires chirping and talking to you, whoa.
On the outside, it's not only hard to pass, it's
Look at
dangerous.
this.
Boy, oh boy,
Same
Robbie
place.
Gordon.
He's just carving his way up through the field, now in 5th place.
He's working good up there. Robbie Gordon's really working good there, Bob, but I'll tell you, it's a dangerous place to pass.
He had a masterful race here last year, too. Would have finished 3rd probably, but ran out of fuel. This is a good place for Robbie Gordon.
So now Scott Pruitt begins to go work on Jacques Villeneuve. This is a battle for 6th place. Pruitt, remember Firestone tires, new to the series once again. Last raced here at this track in 1974. And Pruitt has really been doing a great job for him this year. Moving up in position each race, finally comes up with a podium finish.
Villeneuve, of course, had a big wreck here last year. Whether that's on his mind right now or not, I doubt.
Scott Pruitt, the guy in the red and white car right there in the middle of your screen, did all the Firestone testing. That Firestone back in. He really knows the Firestone tires.
Bobby, look at the groove he's able to run compared to Jacques. He's really all over the track, high, low, anywhere he wants to go. Jacques seems to be committed to a more neutral groove.
And as you said, Bobby, they're already beginning to overcome some of the slower cars in the field. And now all of the leaders have to contend with traffic.
But you know, the nice thing about the Phoenix track, Paul and Sam, is the fact that you do have more than one groove around it. It might be dangerous passing on the outside. It might be difficult. But it's there if a guy wants to take a chance on it.
You know, some of Robbie Gordon's crew, they were, as we ride with Gordon, as he closes now on Emerson Fittipaldi, they said they don't like us to refer to them as the slower cars, that we should be politically correct and refer to them as cars that are speed challenged.
Yeah, I guess that's right. They're not really going slower, they just look like it.
Right.
Well, this is a car that is not speed challenged. Robbie Gordon has the combination right now. Whether it'll last throughout the race, you see that he's closing on Emerson Fittipaldi, who qualified in the front row, but is now, as you see, running only 4th.
Both of the Newman Haas cars got around Fittipaldi in the early going. Is that something he wanted to allow? Is that part of a tactic for this race? We're already on lap 14.
Well, Emerson, of course, won the race here last year in a very smooth drive. He hasn't won any other race for that full year. It'll be more than a year since he's won if he doesn't win here today.
Another thing to remember, all the cars are full of fuel here. So they handle differently than they did during qualification. So there's a different personality that you see right now.
Gordon last year in this race learned a lesson, which is you don't have to be as impetuous as he had been up until that point to get a good finish. He was within reach, as I said, of a podium. Small slip up in the pit strategy, let him run out of gas, but he appreciates that you can win a race by pacing yourself, a lesson that Paul Tracy learned 2 weeks ago down in Australia.
Here's the key fight on the circuit right now as we continue to watch the Valvoline Cummins car of Robbie Gordon.
The car he just passed, Roberto Guerrero. It's good to see Roberto back out racing again. Of course, he had a brilliant victory here many years ago, and as you said, Paul, owns the race record. A record I think might easily be broken today, don't you?
I think easily. Depends on yellow flags. 198 miles an hour. Already Danny Sullivan into the pits, obviously unscheduled, obviously a problem. They're down working in the front area of the car. Shock absorbers are down in there. The steering rack, suspension settings.
This is one of the Pac West cars. They had an unhappy qualifying session with Sullivan.
He's got something weird on that.
Look at this. They come 4 wide off the corner. Once again, in qualifying at least, a lot of the cars were touching up over 200 miles an hour down that front straight. Back in through here where we're watching right now, they'd be at 198 miles an hour as we continue to watch now the leader of the race, Bryan Herta.
Bryan Herta is handling this traffic brilliantly, and there's no tougher assignment in auto racing probably than driving the Phoenix Oval and weaving your way through high-speed traffic. The fact that this young man has seized the opportunity like this to come from the pole and lead the race, I thought was every reason why he might be cautious at the start. Instead, he's obviously wired up and driving a very ambitious race.
So here at Phoenix, 20 miles, 20 laps into the record book. Bryan Herta has led right from the pole. Paul Tracy and Michael Andretti have moved up. Back at Phoenix, Arizona, 27 laps into the record book, and Bryan Herta was scored just a second ago as the leader of the race, followed by Paul Tracy, Michael Andretti. But let's go back and see if that's really the way it works on the track, because Paul Tracy was able to jump around him just seconds ago. And did he get back around him?
Yes, he did, Paul. He got right back around. What it is, it's a traffic thing right now. The traffic, as I talked about earlier, is so thick in there. The guys are moving back and forth, all predicated on how they catch the cars that they're lapping.
Well, you know, Tracy took 11 races before he was able to score a pole. You see him battling absolutely side by side here. To show you how phenomenal Herta is, it took him only 8 races.
Now there's Tracy, almost on the outside of Herta right there, just about got by him again.
And Michael Andretti right behind him. Fittipaldi then is separated by the car of Stefan Johansson, currently 18th.
I just watched Michael Andretti come off turn 4 a little while ago. He was so wiggly, so far sideways, I really thought he was going to lose it. That means he's trying as hard as he can.
Yeah, and he's also aware that the lead 2 cars could be trouble. One driver, Herta, is inexperienced, and the other, Tracy, has been known to crash. Tracy seems to be much more confident now. There goes Michael, terrific.
Michael Andretti makes a duck down to the inside, gets past both of them. Boy, this is what you love about the bull rings, the 1-mile courses.
You don't see any racing better than that. Michael Andretti just absolutely, just like he was zigzagging in and out on the freeway.
And here comes Tracy.
Tracy makes the charge as well.
So Herta fades, and Michael Andretti goes from 3rd to 1st, all in a lap and a half here at Phoenix.
Things at Phoenix happen so fast, sometimes it's hard to even keep up with it.
The Newman Haas team runs 1st and 2nd right now, with Herta's dropped to 3rd. Fittipaldi is 4th. Jacques Villeneuve runs in 5th place, followed by Gordon Pruitt. Gilles de Ferran, Jimmy Vasser, and Al Unser Jr. rounds out the top 10. So Al's coming forward.
And you can see Michael Andretti. That's the kind of the white and the black car. Right there, Michael Andretti.
He has led every race so far this year, always early in the going. Been unable to win any of the races. He's had 2 out of the 3 poles.
You get a good view of those front wings we referenced earlier in the show on both cars. Michael's with the really trick ones.
This is a Ford engine story too, Paul. Ford engines occupying the first 3 spots. The first Mercedes back in 4th with Emerson Fittipaldi.
The new Ford engine that's out may be debuted again or may come show up again at Indianapolis this year. They think they've got more horsepower now.
You're talking about the one they used for qualifying, which is the new generation engine. It's not the one that's in the race car, but fairly obviously is the one that's going to show up at Indy.
Yes, it's a secret engine. They're not saying much about it, but it is a new engine from the bottom to the top. It's a new generation, like you said, Paul, and they claim to be making more power from it. But remember, they won't say a heck of a lot.
The view back from 3rd place, Bryan Herta. 1st and 2nd ahead.
Notice how smooth Herta is. He is a graduate of what is now becoming the way you move up through racing. He started with the Formula Fords with Skip Barber, and then the Barber, what was then the Barber Saab Championship, then into Indy Lights, and then into Indy. Of course, getting his first ride last year with A.J. Foyt at the Speedway at Indianapolis. And now he has this terrific ride with Chip Ganassi. He's never driven much other than open wheelers. He's a real specialist, but he's come right up through what is really a grassroots system now in the U.S.
You saw him take down Roberto Guerrero and then Hiro Matsushita, trying to get back in contact with the leaders.
You can watch his steering wheel, watch his hands. He's not pushing and he's not loose. The car is literally going where he turns it. He makes it look, of course his car is handling good. A lot due to Mo Nunn, but he's turning the car and the car follows it just perfect.
Whoa! Ribeiro. Yellow flag right there.
Turn 2.
That's because of that situation last year. They're now displaying, they have a whole new light system that Buddy Joe, the promoter, put in. Plus they're displaying flags at the corners. And that slows the field for the first time today on the 39th lap of the race. The Honda-powered car was going down the straightaways like a rocket ship yesterday.
That engine turning roughly 14,000 RPM. Honda is really up what we call the price of poker in engines turning RPM.
Michael Andretti is into the pits under the yellow flag.
Michael's getting tires. Doesn't look like any chassis adjustment so far.
Little change here, though, on Herta's car. Change to the left front wing. Oh, he nipped the hose going out. I wonder if that's going to be a penalty.
Well, it usually is. We'll have to see. If you run over a hose, it's a stop-and-go penalty, so we'll just have to see on that one. That would be sad. Guy's getting a hurry. Didn't run over much of the hose, but he did clip a little bit of it.
And let's see if we can go back and take a look at the problem that was created for Ribeiro.
This is the car of Steve Horn.
Already up against the wall. But look at this little, I mean, he does a nice job if he has any, if he's doing it at all. A light glance to the wall and then getting her around the corner.
He didn't have anything to do with that.
Let's go to Jack Arute.
Well, problems for Team Penske one more time. Al Unser Jr. after qualifying so far back. We can see the wheel mark where he came together with Raul Boesel. Now his engine will not fire. The report is it must be some sort of an electronics problem. He is not at all a happy camper. They're going to take the rear deck lid off and take a look at the electronics. Another problem for Team Penske.
Well, that goes from feast to famine. Last year they hardly had any problems at all, and they've had a lot of electrical problems so far in this early season start.
Disappointment showing. Al Jr. rarely shows much emotion in the cockpit, but you're seeing some now. Very frustrating season.
So we see the unusual view of a Penske car sitting in the pits for some period of time. The defending champion Al Unser Jr. No change in the top 5 positions during the stops made under this yellow. 42 laps are complete. Phoenix 200 presented by Pyroil. We can get a view of the leaders of this race. Sans helmet. Michael Andretti, of course, is the leader now. His teammate Paul Tracy sits in 2nd position. In 3rd position now is Bryan Herta, who was the pole sitter, of course, at the start of the race. Emerson Fittipaldi has dropped back to 4th place after starting on the outside of the front row. And Jacques Villeneuve and Scott Pruitt round out the top 6. You're looking down on beautiful Phoenix International Raceway. Tremendous crowd here. And the aerial shots that we have today are provided by the Goodyear Blimp Eagle. It's based over in Carson, California. Not that far of a flight for pilot John Creighton. He's based at Carson, lives in Torrance, California. At the helm today, there it is, the Eagle, high over the track. Now, some things have happened. One of those things is that we saw Robbie Gordon moving up, and then suddenly Jack Arute, he slid back to 12th. What's going on?
Paul, the caution couldn't have come at a better time for the Team Walker operation, because Robbie Gordon had radioed in just a lap before that all of a sudden, mysteriously, the car had gone, and I quote him, way loose. He couldn't control it. That caution allowed the team to go to work. They added a little wing. They feel like they may have solved the problem. They're not quite sure what caused the car to go loose, though. Let's update you on Al Unser Jr. as well. We said they thought it was an electrics problem. Al is back out on the racetrack. Bobby Unser, they had a vapor lock.
They had that same problem down at Australia, Jack. I don't know if you remember or not, but they had that same problem during practice.
Well, they're going to work on that, and he is back out, and there's been more action on pit road as well. Let's check in with Gary Gerould.
Jack, always one of the concerns when there's an accident is running over debris. Paul Tracy radioed his crew and says, I know I ran over something. They come in and they change the tires, and sure enough, on the rear, the circle and the arrow indicate a very tiny puncture, just a small piece of debris. I can feel the air sneaking out of there. So he's got fresh rubber. It's not a concern now. Back on the track, hoping that the cleanup leaves no more debris to contend with. Paul?
And remember, these are tubeless tires, no tubes in them. So a little hole like that, definitely a leak.
All right, we're taking a look here at Dean Hall, who was told to stop by the officials in this position, and they were going to put him back in line, but then apparently he killed the engine, and so now they have to get him restarted. We're under what appears like it's going to be a rather lengthy yellow, and because of the cleanup over coming off of 2, they have the vacuum truck and everything on the track. Apparently, the report is that Dean Hall chose to stop the car after they said, you know, get back in your right position for the restart, and in doing so, that stalled the engine, and now they're trying to get him going again.
He could be having a vapor lock problem also, although we don't usually see. These cars run alcohol instead of gasoline. Alcohol is cold, usually keeps the engines cold. Little Al having these type of problems with vapor lock is definitely a weird type of a thing.
So still under the yellow, 48 laps into the record book. Michael Andretti is the leader, followed by Tracy, Herta, Fittipaldi, and Jack Villeneuve. We'll be back with more from Phoenix. Next Sunday here on ABC Sports, defending champion Al Unser Jr. and IndyCar's best hit the streets of Southern California. Palm trees and blue skies. That's the background for the Toyota Grand Prix of Long Beach. That's next Sunday at 4 o'clock Eastern, 3 Central and Pacific, right here on ABC Sports. Do not miss that one. Now we're still under caution here in Phoenix. Let's go down to the pits and Jack.
Well, Paul, we've seen this sign before, especially on Penske's cars, powered by Mercedes-Benz. But a lot of casual fans are still confused. Now, the Mercedes engine that is being used in IndyCar competition this year is a derivative of what was first called the Chevrolet engine and then called the Ilmor engine. Now, the Mercedes-Benz engine that was run at Indianapolis in the 500 by Team Penske and made its way to victory lane, it ran one race, the Indy 500. That was a pushrod engine, kind of a stock derivative that was built specifically by Team Penske. The new Mercedes-Benz engines that are being run by Penske and some other teams in IndyCar competition this year, they're a double overhead cam engine, very similar to the Honda and the Ford Cosworth. So we thought we'd put an end to all that controversy. It's a Mercedes, but it's not a Mercedes, but then again, it is a Mercedes. Let's check in with Gary Gerould.
Well, the familiar face is a man who has won at this racetrack 4 times in his grand career, but now Mario Andretti, you are retired. How are you adapting to this role of being a spectator and having to listen on the radio?
Well, obviously it's quite different, but you know, I'm just going to have to learn it, that's all. I'm going to have to learn to try to be a little bit useful. Right now, I just try to observe whatever I can, sort of looking over the shoulder type of thing and not interfere with what they're doing, but at the same time, just watch everything that's happening and see if at one point or another I may have some input, but mainly I just want to be quiet. Michael is doing his thing, and
will you maybe someday have your own team, Mario?
Who knows? Why not?
Well, I tell you what, we were reminiscing with him, and he was telling us when he first came here in '64, the Roadsters were running 31-second laps. Now it's 19 and 20. Let's go back to Jack.
Well, Gary, another problem for the Gordon team with Derek Walker at the controls. Now, Robbie Gordon's radio has gone on the fritz. He can hear, but he can't talk. And you guys up in the booth know that while many crew chiefs would like to have that situation, the feedback on a short oval from a driver is so very important.
Especially like if you have a flat tire you think you do, or if you want a stagger change or something like that. It's really difficult, but what they usually have is fingers. They'll put up 1 finger for one thing, 2 fingers for something else, 3 fingers for something else. There's always a backup system for most of the guys.
So now behind the PPG pace car, we'll take a look at the race summary to this point in the race. Should have about 1 more lap back to the green flag. After 50 laps, Michael Andretti is the leader. The only other leader has been Herta, well, Tracy for a lap. Average speed down at 122. It was actually at 158 before we hit this yellow, so they were running on a record pace. But on short ovals, the yellow flags tend to determine the record.
Well, looks like they're not quite cleaned up yet, Paul. It doesn't look like they're going to come green the next time around.
Cars out of the race. Ribeiro obviously with the accident. Danny Sullivan.
We're seeing the same domination of this race as we saw in Australia 2 weeks ago. The Newman Haas team is really, they have the whip hand, it would seem, in Indy racing right now.
Adrian Fernandez, the view over the right shoulder. He runs currently in 10th place. Now here's what they're saying. One more lap, we'll come back to green flag racing. When they do, they're going to show a black flag to Bryan Herta because of what you saw when he nipped the hose going out of the pits. And also the indication was that there would probably be a black flag coming out to Salazar. Same violation.
Now, the black flag, of course, means just a stop-and-go penalty. But remember, here at Phoenix, you can't stop without losing a lap and go again. It's just going to be a big penalty.
There's Bryan Herta.
Herta is third now. We'll take note of where he is when he's back running again.
Here was when he left the pits, and the reason that he'll see the black flag.
Watch the left rear. Watch the left rear. Right there. Just run over the hose right there.
Now that's a stop on a yellow flag stop. Is that a rookie, a new guy kind of thing, Bobby?
No, not really. See, he has nothing, no power over that. It was the pit guys that made the mistake. They should have never left that hose laying there.
All right, so we come back to the green flag. Michael Andretti is the leader. Robbie Gordon is not in the fight, but Paul Tracy sweeps around, picks up the lead of the race.
Remember, that's around his teammate right there.
Carl Haas has got to be just chopping right through that cigar every time these two get together like that.
He bites them cigars right in two on those times.
They are both Chargers. Paul Tracy now pulls away.
Paul Tracy probably focuses more intently on a race than almost anybody I've ever seen.
Now he looks like he's running away from Michael right there. He is, but he's running in clean air. There's no dirty air in front of him. He has no cars to pass for a while.
Let's go to Jack Aruta's
Bryan Herta's car. As he came in, he tried to keep the revs up, and he almost stalled it, Paul. It was very, very disjointed on that stop-and-go penalty.
Well, when he first started to roll out, he would have been able to catch the back of the field. Now, just behind him, Paul Tracy is bearing down. He's going to struggle to stay on the lap. You see him ahead there in Paul Tracy's car? That is Herta.
The key thing, of course, is if he goes a lap down and there's another yellow flag, he's stuck a lap down. If he's on the same lap, then he's able to make up the distance and get competitive again. So what happens next here is very critical, and knowing that, Tracy will try to put Herta, a real rival, a lap down.
Now Villeneuve comes up to challenge Michael Andretti, trying to sweep around the outside. Whoa!
Villeneuve had a sensational...
No, I'm sorry. My mistake. What I thought was the blue car
Gordon.
is in
Robbie
fact Gordon coming back. Forgive me.
But Villeneuve had a great restart. You see him back there, just a second or so back. You'll see him off on the right of the screen. Villeneuve had a great restart and is running third right now.
And Gordon now trying to come back with some power.
There's Villeneuve right there.
There's Villeneuve. That's how close he is.
With Emerson Fittipaldi right behind him. Great Canadian and a great Brazilian running in third and fourth. Canadians, incidentally, as we watch Paul Tracy lead this race right now, have won the last 5 IndyCar races. Between Villeneuve and Tracy, they've won the last 5, and if you count Scott Goodyear's win at the Michigan 500, the last 6 of 9. So the Canadians are on a tear right now in IndyCar racing.
Robbie Gordon, by passing the leader, got back on the leader lap. So at least he is back into the action now, runs in 12th place. Now you're on the leader, Paul Tracy.
You see the tremendous disparity in speed. Tracy just ripping by one of the speed disadvantaged cars there, Paul.
I think for our type of language, we're going to have to say the slower cars occasionally.
I think so too.
Otherwise, we're going to fool everybody too much. On board with Paul Tracy. Look at the new wing that they've got on that car. Watch the wings when you see a front-end shot. Right there, you see Paul Tracy's car. Look at the difference between the height of the nose and the ground, and look at the way the wings curve down there. That'll tell you. And you can compare that to the other cars during the race.
The view from second place, Michael Andretti. Let's get an update on Tracy, though, Gary.
With this second set of tires after the yellow, Paul is reporting to the crew that they've picked up an understeer problem, so he's pushing a bit. We'll see if that magnifies it all now as he continues to try to protect that lead, Paul.
Just to make it clear what Gary means by pushing, it means you have to turn the wheel more than you really want to. The front end of the car is not biting well. The front of it is sliding out toward the wall.
4/10 of a second back. You ride with second place. Michael Andretti. Now there's 4/10 looking back from Paul Tracy to Michael Andretti, the Newman Haas team in front.
Pushing is a stable condition. You're very unlikely to lose control of the car when it's pushing, but it's slow and it heats the tires up.
Sometimes you hit the wall with the front end first when you do that, Sam.
Yeah, not a pleasant experience.
Once again, Tracy's going to get into some traffic now. This is where Michael tends to excel. Let's see if he excels in one. Oh, so close.
Now, a pass like that really started happening clear back in turn 4. We didn't see all of that right there, but it starts happening way back there, and Michael getting a run at it. And, of course, the drivers are sitting there planning their passes with things like that.
Remember that Tracy all but had this race won the last 2 years. Last year he got into a bit of bad luck and was involved in a crash. And 2 years ago he was leading the race and made an error. So he feels that he's got a Phoenix coming to him sooner or later, and it might be today.
Well, look how fast they cruise past the other cars out from under the Goodyear Bridge.
Michael's car, you can see, is much more neutral in its handling, and he's able to use different lines around the racetrack.
Speed on the last lap. Michael definitely closing.
But you know, there's not really an issue at this early in the race. The race is still kind of new. There's no sense in the guys beating their heads against the wall or against each other too hard, because as long as you're running up close to the front, first or second, third place, really not too bad.
Right, especially in view of the fact that the two leaders are teammates and are pulling away, Bobby, from third place.
Except teammates won't make any difference to those two. They're both very stubborn young men. It might make a difference to Carl Haas that owns that team, but it won't to these guys.
Michael tries to the inside again. Still not enough. Comes high off the corner and loses.
Well, you can watch just as Tracy.
Maybe he doesn't.
Across.
There it is.
Look at that.
Yeah, but so what happened is you could watch the air get bad to Michael's front wings as he was behind there and the car washed right across. But what he did is he hooked the car, came across to the left, and did a pass right where Paul Tracy didn't think he would do.
I'll tell you what, that was a handy piece of driving. Now Michael Andretti takes the lead from teammate Tracy.
Yeah, he used some momentum, and of course now that he's ahead, it's even tougher for Paul Tracy, because it's if he's got a pushing condition, it's made even worse when you're following another car.
What do you used to call those kind of things, Bobby? An almost crash?
Yeah, an almost crash. That's right. There's a whole bunch of those happening here at Phoenix.
And a good fight here is Fittipaldi trying to take third place away from Villeneuve.
Fittipaldi, of course, qualified on the outside of the front row. The first real display of speed by the Penske team so far this year.
And look at the back of this group. Here comes Scott Pruitt, now running in 5th place.
Well, the idea is that those Firestone tires do not seem to heat up quite as much as the Goodyears. They're a little more consistent. So you expect Scott Pruitt to move up the longer the green flag flies.
Sam, that's not really a product of heating up. I have to disagree with you just a little bit. The Firestones have been running just a little bit harder than the other. It's all the rubber on how stable it could be, and Firestone's really done their homework pretty good, Sam.
Okay, got it.
You accept it. This is great. Bobby and Sam are agreeing as we're going to take a few minutes out here on the 75th lap with Michael Andretti, the leader, and Paul Tracy running in 2nd place. We'll be back. Back at Phoenix International Raceway, the Phoenix 200 presented by Pyroil. Moments we had a really tight battle right at the front of the field. It's still fairly tight, 1 through 5. Michael Andretti is leading it. Emerson Fittipaldi's into 2nd place around Paul Tracy, followed by Villeneuve and then Scott Pruitt. Let's get a couple of pit updates, beginning with Jack Arute.
Well, Paul, Emerson Fittipaldi is on the hunt. He radioed into his crew about 10 laps ago. Should I go from 5th to 6th? They said 10-4. He did, and you see the end result. In the meantime, Team Green has been talking lap after lap to Jack Villeneuve, giving him the separation between himself and the leaders. They say that's a motivating factor for Villeneuve when he's in the car, especially when they see that separation go down in terms of numbers. Now, one driver that's no longer in this event is standing by with Gary Gerould.
That driver's Danny Sullivan, and he's been watching a monitor, wishing that he was out there. What put you out, Danny?
Well, the handling wasn't great, but we had that all weekend. But eventually I had a brake problem where the brake pedal was going all the way to the floor going into one. Because I wasn't handling good, I was having to brake more for some of the faster cars. And it just got to be a dangerous situation where I couldn't stop for anything, an incident or anything. So I had to come in and park it.
Good to see you back on the circuit full time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, boy, did you see Jack as he handled a split there, came up behind Teo Fabi. We've been watching Emerson Fittipaldi running currently in second, trying to catch Michael, while at the same time Tracy's been trying to catch Fittipaldi.
It's just like you switched or threw a switch on Fittipaldi. He's just been absolutely flying. I mean, really moving. So something, he must have got a burr under his saddle, Paul.
Well, as he asked, can he start using sixth gear?
Well, sixth gear, just so everybody knows, sixth gear is a higher gear than fifth. It's normally higher. It's to get better fuel mileage. Maybe their engine, for example, just working a little bit better at lower RPM.
Let me write this down. Sixth is higher than fifth. Got it.
Well, but you see, these gears, you got to remember, you can put ratios any place. You could have sixth in first or first in sixth. And so normally speaking, sixth comes after five, and the way the shift pattern works is usually higher.
And of course, they could have put in a 6-speed gearbox a reverse and then have a 5-speed.
That's right.
Enough of that.
We talked about how much that penalty would hurt Bryan Herta. He is now back just to report in 12th position. More than a lap back. That's how painful the smallest error by Bryan Herta has been.
Black flag really hurts you at a place like this. These cars only taking 20 seconds to go around a lap.
Here's
really
the fight for the lead as Fittipaldi tries to get inside. Can't do it. But look at that, using traffic. Michael Andretti now onto the back straight. Fittipaldi falls back just a bit. By the way, Arie Luyendyk driving his first race of the year here out of the race. Mechanical problems.
This is the first time this year that the Penske cars have shown superior speed. I mean, Michael Andretti right now is on the defensive and Emerson Fittipaldi on the attack in a Penske.
Fittipaldi actually in the last 5 laps closed at about 0.7 of a second a lap.
This is
coming to this position in direct contact with the leader, Michael Andretti.
I was down just before the race started talking with Little Al. I asked him how the cars were handling because if we remember right, this morning they were very slow, or at least slow by our judgment, in practice. And Little Al told me, he said, Uncle Bobby, the cars are literally perfect. He said, they're handling just the way we want them to. And our practice this morning, we ran very old tires, just so we could try and see what it would be like now, later in the race.
The front view from Bobby Rahal. They just came around in that battle for first place. A little debris on his antenna there.
That's the radio antenna there. And he got a little bit of paper from the grandstands on it.
Rahal is back in 14th. Herta is ahead of him on the road in 13th. Talked to Rahal yesterday. He seemed so confident. He did well all through practice. Then his troubles began in qualifying, and now in the race he has not been able to make a move at all. Remember, he has more points than anyone coming into this race.
Boy, take a look as once again Fittipaldi swings around slower traffic, in this case Herta, trying to stay in contact. And look, he gets pinched up there, trying to stay in contact with Michael Andretti.
That's Stefan Johansson he's trying to get around right there in the backup car. The one that Johansson rescued his race car, of course, and that's the backup car he's in.
A certifiable wreck, a mighty crash coming off before. Tires and pieces everywhere. That was in this morning's warm-up. They moved to the backup car. Good piece of work by Tony Bettenhausen's crew, having that backup car in condition to go racing. Of course, most of the teams now, what they do is the minute a change happens on the primary car, Bobby, they make it also on the backup car so they could interchange them quickly. We watch this fight for fourth. Pruitt, Villeneuve.
They actually set the cars up all identically the same. They measure them today almost with micrometers, so they can just move the pieces over, set them the same. They've got pieces remaining from the car that got wrecked. They move those over, but they're always just exactly the same.
get a view there of that yellow Pennzoil car of Gil de Ferran, who is closing on Pruitt. De Ferran's now running in 6th place, so very shortly, especially with this traffic ahead, he's probably going to join this battle.
De Ferran is the young Brazilian driving for Jim Hall this year, who has absolutely no experience on ovals. This is his first ever oval race, and he is handling it beautifully.
He reminds me this year very much as Villeneuve did last year. He's a rookie. De Ferran is a rookie. So was this man right here last year, and he was absolutely fantastic. Well, that's the way De Ferran's been looking this year.
I was talking to De Ferran yesterday as we come back to the front of the field, Michael Andretti. And he said before practice he was apprehensive. After practice he was very apprehensive. Then he finally felt like he got a handle on it, but there was still the race to go, and he was showing some very real respect for what he might find in the race.
Well, you know, Phoenix, Paul, will humble any race driver. It doesn't make any difference if you've been here 40 times, it will still humble you. To a new guy, it'll really humble you, either that or you end up against the wall.
Well, let me play to your ego. You still have the leading lap record, over 1,115 laps. Does it still intimidate you?
Yes, it would. If I drove here tomorrow, it would still intimidate me. This was always one of the hardest tracks that I ever ran, but it's a nice racetrack.
Let's go to the pits. Jack.
Paul, as we get to the halfway mark, let's update the conditions of the things we talked about at the beginning of the show. We were talking about Bryan Herta. Well, you've seen the stop-and-go penalty has taken him out of the hunt. He will be coming onto pit road very quickly. Let's go to Gary Gerould.
Jack, for Paul Tracy, that push that we mentioned a short time ago has gotten worse. That's why he's fallen back behind both his teammate Andretti and Emerson Fittipaldi. It's gotten to the point now that they anticipate with either a yellow or the next pit stop, they'll dial in more wing up front, trying to get him better handling characteristics.
Boy, is this a super battle at the front of the field as Fittipaldi keeps trying Michael. He comes off of 2, a little bit lower than Michael. By the way, Andre Ribeiro has been released from the hospital. Perhaps we'll be able to talk to him in a moment.
And remember, when the cars do start making pit stops, everybody at home, watch. Do they change the little wicker bill on the back of the rear wings? There's Emo trying to get by Michael again. Or do they adjust the front wings and they change stagger when they change the tires?
Remember when Emerson was trying to put Little Al a lap behind him at Indianapolis last year, and he wound up in the wall? Emerson did. I imagine he's being particularly careful now, mindful of the air currents from other cars, because he could easily wash out and go right into the wall. This is exciting racing.
Review back for Michael. That's Emerson closing. Fittipaldi makes his move. They get Michael caught up behind the slower car of Cheever, and it pays off for Fittipaldi.
Easiest way in the world to make a pass here. But as you watch, Fittipaldi was trying to run a little bit off from Michael all the time there while he was figuring out where he's going to do a pass. That's trying to run the clean air. That's trying to get more good air to the front wing. Plus, the radiators need a little good air every once in a while to cool the engine.
So Fittipaldi now takes the lead.
Just imagine, Paul, when we're running here, we're bored with Michael Andretti right there. When we're running behind another car, the exhaust, over 800 horsepower, is coming out, and it runs right into the guy behind, so it affects the wings and the radiators.
Past the halfway point, 94 laps to go. Fittipaldi, followed by Michael, Paul Tracy, Scott Pruitt, Jacques Villeneuve. The top 5 have been in contact the whole way. Then Gil de Ferran, who's also in that battle, followed by Robbie Gordon, who's now up to 7th. Raul Boesel, Adrian Fernandez, and Teo Fabi. 11th, Stefan Johansson, followed by Christian Fittipaldi, Bobby Rahal, Eddie Cheever, Mauricio Grugerman. 16th is Al Unser Jr., then Jimmy Vasser, Roberto Guerrero, Bryan Herta, and Dean Hall runs in 20th place. So the leader of the race now becomes Emerson Fittipaldi, last year's champion. We'll be back after this message and a word from our ABC stations.
Gary Gerould, it should be his last one.
Paul Tracy is up on the jacks right now. We're looking to see if Emerson comes by. Tracy's down. Tracy's moving. Tracy beats Fittipaldi out, I think. I still haven't seen Emo. They're waiting for Michael Andretti now at this end.
Emerson Fittipaldi already long on the roll and on the backstretch now. The reason for all this is a yellow flag caused by this man, Stefan Johansson. We don't know if he actually brushed the wall. Here's Michael in, Gary.
And we're watching routine service now. We'll see if he can gain any of that time. Fittipaldi had gotten by us so quickly we didn't realize when Tracy was here that he was already gone. This is now a 15-second stop. Problem on the left rear. They can't get the nut off. The air jack is just spinning back here. Oh, high drama on the left corner. They've got 5 men down here now, and they still, all Michael can do is flip the throttle. They're going to have to send him out without changing the left rear.
Boy, that isn't good news. That's really bad news. They don't even, I'm sure that they don't even know for sure what their stagger is. There's many problems linked in with that.
Stagger being the relationship of the diameter of the inside rear to the outside.
Right. Yeah, a guy on this that really did good. It's a typical thing, though. It's Roger Penske's car with Emerson Fittipaldi, who came in so early after it went yellow that it was going to be a wonder if he didn't get passed by the pace car. But they did make it. Emma really came out the leader on this type of a thing.
Michael Andretti pulls a tearaway away from his helmet. Excuse me, Sam, because we need to make sense of this. We were expecting a pit stop within 4 laps, and then apparently, we're still not sure, but apparently Stefan Johansson brushed the wall. He screamed into turn 1 with all kinds of smoke pouring off of the right front tire. They brought out the yellow. That brought everybody in for the pits. We should go green shortly. Back at Phoenix, still under caution. Tonight here on ABC, it's a special hour of America's Funniest Home Videos, followed by an all-new episode of America's Super Couple. Lois and Clark, and then Eddie Murphy, Robin Givens, Halle Berry, and Martin Lawrence guest in the New York premiere of Boomerang. That's all tonight, prime time, right here on ABC. Still under the caution. Let's go down to the pits and Jack.
Well, Paul, first it was a wrecked Alumex car for Tony Bettenhausen's team in practice, and now a second one. Stefan Johansson, what happened?
Well, I was just minding my own business, you know, going through turn 3 and 4 at the same pace, keeping my line, and all of a sudden Jack Villeneuve was there on the outside trying to pass in about a 2-foot hole. I don't know.
Gary Gerould, let's check in with you before we go back to green.
And very quickly, Jack, look at this. This fell out of the radiator of Paul Tracy's car. You talk about debris. He hit this somewhere out there, and it's lucky it didn't cut down a tire. We're getting ready for green, Paul.
Not too good on the radiators either, Paul.
Exactly. And another concern when it's a tight little track like a bull ring. It's not hard to get debris, especially here, though not as much as it used to be because of grass planted. You used to get a lot of sand on the track. Here we are. We're ready to go back green. Leader of the race is Fittipaldi. He's down to the inside of Cheever. But look at Tracy. Tracy takes the lead away from him on a restart.
Well, there was a deal where Tracy absolutely gambled on going the outside. It was all predicated on the slower cars being in front of him and just snookered Emmo. Emmo's got a bad position right there.
Bobby, Tracy took the outside at the start of the race, too, and he's shown tremendous combination, again, as he did in Australia, of maturity and sheer speed. I mean, he could easily have lost a lot of ground with that understeering problem that he had, the pushing problem. He was very patient. Now they've got a better setup, and he's back in the lead.
While we watched the run at the lead, Gil de Ferran went into the pits, responding to a black flag for a pit exit violation. There's also a whole line of cars that they have lined up that are also going to have black flags. None of the leaders, though, as a result of pit speed violations.
Well, to the folks that are sitting home watching it, they don't want to see the black flags and the penalties, so they don't want to get Wally Dallenbach's black flags. It really hurts in this race, as we saw it happen to Brian Herta earlier.
As you see a Canadian battling a Brazilian, it's interesting, this Nations Cup that IndyCar has instituted this year to create excitement among the different drivers. If you score all the points scored by Canadians, you've got 60, all the Brazilians 44, all the Americans 44, and I think as the season goes on, this Nations Cup is going to get to be very prestigious and really something to watch.
Again, de Ferran in and out on the black flag for a pit exit violation. As we watch the front of the field once again, this continuing battle, first and second place, Tracy, Fittipaldi. Scott Pruitt is up to third. Then Villeneuve.
See, now this is what's happened to Tracy is a perfect example of what can happen on oval racing. He was in trouble, big trouble with that pushing. He dropped way back to third, losing time on every lap. but a fortuitous yellow. They dialed in the exact right correction, what he needed, and now he's right back in the lead again. So the shifting fortunes on an oval, you got to keep your eyes open.
And Emmo's not finished with him, though. Emmo's working. Watch Emmo work a little bit lower groove. Now, that isn't because Emmo's working better down there as it is. He needs the clean air. He needs to keep his wings working, as I told you earlier. Look at there. He's off line from Tracy. That's so he can try to get a run at him through the turns.
Well, in the past couple of laps, Emerson has been pulling in much faster lap time, which is accounting for the little interval that he's making up. He turned one at 164 to Tracy's 161. Now he's going to try him on the inside. Can't do it. Last time around, Emmo turned a 162.6 to Paul Tracy's 161.2.
Now, right there, too, Tracy knew that he wasn't going to be passed, but he saw Emmo in his mirrors. He's watching both sides. Emmo's concept right there is keep him worried, keep him guessing on which side he's going to be on.
Battle, remember, between two men who were teammates last year with the Penske team. The Penske team was downsized this year from 3 cars to 2. That left Tracy without a ride with Penske. He was picked up by Newman Haas, and he has been very, very effective for them.
All right, going to see a black flag maybe for Scott Pruitt, Gary Gerould?
Well, that's being debated, and Jim McGee is not at all happy about it. He's been lobbying with officials the last several laps. They've told Pruitt to stay out there. He's running in 3rd place. He may be overruled. He may have to come in. If he does, it's for a blend line violation on that last pit exit.
Generally, the rule is what? 3 laps, you have to respond to the black. Now, I assume that once the officials start talking with Jim McGee, who's the chief on the team, the manager, that they'll make some allowances there, but...
Yeah, but you got to remember one thing. McGee is one of the best debaters I ever heard in my life.
That's what I was going to say.
He's going to keep them talking for a long time, trying to soften them up. He may get it done.
Fittipaldi comes alongside of Tracy. And now Fittipaldi has the lead, but can Tracy slingshot it back?
Remember, this is a battle of engines, too. Tracy has the Ford engine. Fittipaldi now leading with a Mercedes-Benz engine.
He actually was working the low groove on him. He was running in the clean air. He got him off at turn 2. He got a little run at him and got him right in the dog leg.
And in that pass, Emerson Fittipaldi has run the fastest lap of the race at 169.3 miles an hour. So Fittipaldi with Mercedes-Benz is flying.
Well, in a lot of ways, that answers some of the questions that we've all had for the first 3 races this year, including this one. That is, has Penske missed on his cars this year? Is there something wrong with the cars? Doesn't look like it right now.
What does it tell us about Indianapolis?
That tells you can just bet you. If cars go fast at Phoenix, they definitely go fast at Indianapolis, you said earlier, Paul. You don't miss on that. History always shows you.
We are going to see some extraordinary speeds at Indianapolis. I think, talking to Bobby Rahal yesterday, 234 possibly, a new track record, I think, maybe set at Indianapolis this year. Should be fabulous.
Emerson Fittipaldi, oldest driver in the series now. Who's second oldest? Would you believe Denny Sullivan?
You're kidding.
Yeah.
Well, of course, you also believe that Paul Tracy, who they're battling, is one of the youngest. So you have a man here almost twice as old as Paul Tracy, just snatching the lead from him.
But if you want to talk about age a little bit, let me just tell you about Emmo, the guy right there in the red and white number 2 car. He is probably the best physical shape driver in this entire series.
Scott Pruitt answering the black flag right now. There he is. So McGee lost the debate.
Scott Pruitt has had almost a miracle season so far with a 4th and a 3rd. He was running 3rd at the time of that black flag. That's the first bit of bad luck, the first untoward thing to happen to Scott Pruitt so far this year.
Sam, I can't believe that Jim McGee lost that debate. You know, Pat Patrick just gives him that frowning look, like the mean look, and then McGee just carries it for a long time. He ought to be an attorney sometimes.
We have too many. Villeneuve, Gordon sitting right behind him. This is a battle for 4th place.
Gordon, of course, is one of those that did not qualify that well. He was back in the 5th row. He's now worked his way up to 5th place, and if he is able to pass Villeneuve, it will be for 4th. This is the ability to pass that we were talking about.
Now again, just so everybody knows, that's the camera shaking. The bodies on the car don't shake like that. So don't try to think that the body's coming off, because it really isn't.
Scott Pruitt, by the way, did not lose a lap as Gordon slides to the inside. He did drop to 6th, but he did stay on the leader lap. And here's Gordon, forcing his way past. And Gordon now comes up into 4th place.
Remember, Gordon, with no radio, he cannot talk to his pits. They can talk to him. That is a handicap, though, no question.
So Robbie Gordon now to 4th. Had some problems this year. Bobby's been frustrated the first couple of events.
He's the first one today that moved the group out high, showed everybody that they could be passed on the outside. That's something that many years ago didn't happen at Phoenix, incidentally.
Jimmy Vasser out of the race. He lost both 5th and 6th gear. Now let's go back to what we were discussing at the start of the race. We'll keep an eye. It's Al Unser Jr. moving up, but of course Little Al is running in 11th place and 3 laps behind the race itself, so he's truly not in contention. Going back to the start of the show, we were talking, for example, about Herta, about his engine. Let's begin and review with Jack Arute.
Well, Brian Herta had his share of problems, but he led early, so it looks as if the influence of Mo Nunn, well, that was positive. The effects of the new engine didn't seem to hurt him when it came time to run the race package. The same can be said for Jacques Villeneuve. Villeneuve running just as we expected. The Firestone Tire and Rubber Company, Scott Pruitt, they were up to 3rd until that black flag penalty. What about your stories, Gary?
Well, Paul Tracy on this set of tires has developed another push, but he is up here, I believe, running in 2nd place at the moment. Remember, Michael Andretti had a problem on the pit stop. They couldn't change the left rear, but he's gone from 5th to 3rd. So obviously, the car seems to somehow be responding. Emerson Fittipaldi, we touched on him. Well, Evo's been the story of the day, it would seem. Team Penske right up there in the top spot.
The speed on the oval, of course, part of the story at the start. We've seen Emerson Fittipaldi run 169.3 miles an hour as we watch Michael Andretti to take the lead of the race away from Paul Tracy. We've had 2 yellow flags for a total of 8 laps, and as a result of that, the average speed of the race is at 129.8. But if they can keep flying, as we watch Herta in the pits again, they might be able to get up toward Roberto Ferraro's record of 138.050. Let's go back to Jack Arute.
Well, Paul, it just seems as if the spark has been taken right out of Chip Ganassi's team. They're doing it mechanically and methodically, but for Brian Herta, once he got that penalty, they're not as jaunty. They're not jumping up and down. They know that they're not in the hunt for the lead.
Yeah, let's also keep in mind now we look at Michael Andretti, who's really running very good in 3rd place, but he didn't get that left rear. Now he's got about half of the race. If they can't change it again, if they can make it to the end, he's going to really have a good chance at least of being hurting on that left rear tire, because left side tires do get worn out after a while.
Mauricio Gugelmin just onto the outside there for a moment as we come back to the front of this field. And Emerson Fittipaldi, he won here last year. Is he on his way again? Fittipaldi looking very solid. Once he got around Paul Tracy, he really began to pull hard. 145 laps complete of the 200-mile race. Fittipaldi's in front. Looking down on the bull ring that is Phoenix International from high above in the Goodyear Blimp Eagle. They've been providing these aerial shots, been very helpful today. Goodyear, of course, travels all over the country with their blimps, over 100,000 miles every year, covering major sporting events. And we've got a car sliding, and that is DeFerrin. Looks like he almost had it saved until he caught those tires at the end of the wall. That'll bring out the yellow. And as a matter of fact, since we are under yellow, they will close up. Let's start with Jack Arute. And Jack, what's this going to do to pit strategy and fuel?
Well, Paul, before we had this yellow, I checked with Team Penske, and they said it is going to be very, very close. When I asked them if they could go the distance, we got a problem with our microphone here. They just smiled. They weren't sure. This caution is welcome for them, but the question is whether they will stay out and whether they will come in or not, because that's how close it was. It was down to 1 lap.
Well, DeFerrin got back underway, Jack, so it is going to be a fairly short yellow.
We're going to find out right now. Let's see what this number 2 car does. He's not going to the pits. He's chosen to stay out, so Penske is gambling. Penske is gambling that they can make it to the end. Remember, now in the yellows, you get about twice the fuel mileage as you do under the green.
So DeFerrin comes in, at least for a check of the tires and a change. Let's go to Gary Gerould.
Newman Haas has elected to keep their drivers, Tracy and Andretti, running 2nd and 3rd on the track. They made the call for the driver. The driver says, we will stay out. That's going to save Michael in terms of fuel, because he was definitely going to have a splash and go, but there's still concern over the wear on that left rear tire.
DeFerrin was up running in 8th place. There it is. Boy, hang on to it.
He had
no control at all when you're on the grass. He didn't really get control until he got back on pavement.
He didn't have any control for a long time there. He was just riding in that car, Paul.
He had been the front running of the men that had not raced here before, the rookies.
The tenacious Scott Pruitt continues to hang on to the tail end of the leader lap in 6th position. Let's go to Jack Arute.
Well, Paul, Jacques Villeneuve is going to gamble, and this is what we've seen with Team Green so many times before. They are going to stay out. They're not going to come in. They're going to be marginal on fuel, but they feel that they can roll the dice. It's kind of like having an ace in your pocket when you're playing 21 and only having a 5 showing. It could go either way.
You know, yesterday in practice, Jack, we noticed that a lot of the guys were running, or after the qualifying is over, were running till the end and running out of fuel. This is what they were running out for, was to see, could they run the cars out and come in and have all the fuel gone? That's the whole secret to it. They don't even want a quart left in it.
Well, Bobby, you know, you're so right. One of the things that these teams do so well as compared to maybe 3 or 4 or 5 years ago is they like to try all the different scenarios, both in practice and then in pre-race. You know, we've seen guys now literally changing the noses, trying to time that. We've seen guys running out of fuel. You can't leave anything up to chance anymore.
So Emerson Fittipaldi, under yellow, is the leader of the race. Saturday, the Professional Bowlers Tour rolls into Detroit for the 2nd jewel of their Triple Crown, the U.S. Open. And then, on ABC's Wide World of Sports, it's off to Colorado for the World Mountain Biking Championships, plus the finals of the Foot Locker Slam Fest, and a key race on the road to the Kentucky Derby as the NASDAQ presents the Santa Anita Derby. That's all Saturday here on ABC Sports. So Fittipaldi has the lead. Our 3rd yellow of the day. This one caused when Phil DeFerrin spun. But now we're ready to come back to green flag.
See how quickly he nailed it?
Now it's going to be a contest. Everybody keep watching. Fuel. Fuel is going to be the thing. Fuel is what we got to watch for. If any of them, who's going to run out first?
160 laps are complete. That's Tracy in close pursuit, just a little over a 1.5 seconds back. Let's go back to Jack. Robbie Gordon. Jack is running in 4th place, so his day's getting better.
His day's getting better, but he's gambling as well. Walker and company have decided to stay out. They did not pit. They're marginal on fuel as well, but they say, with a smile, we can go the distance. And then they whisper, we hope.
And remember, Jack, that it was last year that they did run out of fuel here, so they're rolling the dice once again.
And you can believe that Robbie Gordon realized that as soon as they radioed to him that he was going to stay out.
Now another thing, all these drivers have computers in their cars. They can read on the dash, theoretically, how far they can make it.
Pruitt just got around Villeneuve. That's a move for 5th place. Now he's got just ahead of him Robbie Gordon. Nice tight little fight here. Leaders are separated by 2 seconds now. Michael Andretti sitting back a full second yet from 2nd place. Thank goodness we have EDS scoring, because on this oval, you have to have a computer figure it out for you.
Well, hooked up with the traffic, things happen so fast here, it's difficult to keep track of all of it.
You see Villeneuve there in that blue car. Just move inside Christian Fittipaldi.
Villeneuve's really charged hard all day.
He's had a well-balanced car, but now we know that they're taking a chance on their fuel.
He is the last man on the lead lap, running in 6th place. We're back up in 2nd place now. Paul Tracy.
Villeneuve did almost no testing here.
As we watch Paul Tracy, let's go to the Newman Haas pits again, and Gary.
Well, unfortunately,
here comes Michael. Here comes Michael, Gary, right around Paul.
That's what we were just going to say, because they thought he might be able to make the move. The push for Tracy has been compounded, and because they stayed out, they couldn't do anything about it. He's just paid the price by losing 2nd place.
But you know, Gary, the strange thing about that was Tracy waved him by. Now that's what we've got to figure out. Maybe you guys can figure that out in the pits.
Well, the point is, Bobby, I believe that these 2 drivers, despite their independent natures and incredible burning ambition, have been cooperating. Michael let Tracy by at Australia 2 weeks ago, gave him a nice wave by, and now we've seen this happen. I think they're actually working together very effectively.
Interesting, for the first time in a number of years, the Newman Haas team is getting really good information, because they have 2 drivers in Tracy and Andretti whose driving styles are similar.
Well, also Tracy, of course, coming from the Penske organization, a great test driver, very able to make the most of the data that the team accumulates as test miles are run up, and I think that that's starting to benefit Newman Haas now.
Of course, that's where Paul proved his worth for Penske, is he was hired originally just to test the car.
I think it's something the Penske team is probably missing right now, and not having Paul Tracy.
So it is Fittipaldi at the front. Then Andretti, then Tracy. Here you'll see the interval. There's the leader just went through. Right there is
Michael Andretti. It's a full straightaway. It's quite a bit. But there's still a lot of laps to go.
6.07 seconds. Fittipaldi over Michael Andretti. 169 laps complete. 31 to go. Interval closing down just a little bit. Michael trying to track down Emerson Fittipaldi. There he is. Emerson Fittipaldi out in front. But Michael, despite problems with the rear tire, very definitely in pursuit. We'll be back with more from Phoenix after this message and a word from our ABC stations.
Pruett have been compounded. Contact with Paul Tracy going through turn 1, headed to 2. Suspension damage on the right front. They've changed the tires, and as we take a look at the replay, you can see how they just brushed together. It may have damaged the wishbone, the suspension on the right front. Pruett sets in the pits, just came off the jack. We'll see whether or not he can get back out. They tell him to try it. He's back headed. Oh, he stalls. No, it catches. And he gets away.
But Pruett losing 2 laps on that spot. Staying down in 6th place. The question I have, Bobby and Sam, is what about Paul Tracy's car? He was making a move on Tracy. The touch was to the left rear of Tracy.
I don't think that's a problem, Paul. You find that the rears are a whole lot stronger than the fronts. Pruett bent either an upward control arm or maybe the tie rod.
Bobby Rahal out of the race now with Jack Arute.
Bobby, on top of the points coming to Phoenix, what put you out of this one?
Engine broke. Felt like the same thing that happened in the warm-up yesterday afternoon. Yeah, too bad. The car wasn't great, but we were going to be a top 10, and unfortunately, this hurts us.
Well, it hurts him, guys, but he's got one more race between it now in Indianapolis, and of course, that's coming up in Nazareth.
His teammate Raul Boesel there being lapped by Emerson Fittipaldi. Boesel in the black and yellow car running 8th.
I'll tell you what, Rahal's not scoring a point here is going to have a massive impact on PPG points. Rahal will drop, if they finish as they are now, down into 4th place, tied with Villeneuve, actually tied for 3rd with Villeneuve with 30 points, and Paul Tracy will take the points lead, followed by Scott Pruett. But remember, Scott's in trouble. Let's go back to Jack Arute.
Well, Paul, this poker game on pit road, we may have seen the first guy blink, that being Team Penske. According to our information, he has been radioed by the crew to come in 15 laps. I repeat, to stop in 5 laps. With 5 laps to go, look for Emerson Fittipaldi to make his presence known on pit road for what we call a timed fuel stop.
Now, the time fuel stop means that they're just put in probably about 3 to 4 gallons. What Roger Penske's crew will figure out just enough to get him to the checkered flag.
But of course, that is like a little more than a stop and go penalty, and we saw what that did earlier, dropping Herta back more than a lap when it happened. So that's the consequence.
But Sam, keep in mind, there's a lot of other cars that are running fast out there that may have to do exactly the same thing.
Oh yes, but if they don't, that could be crippling for Emerson. Remember that Emerson Fittipaldi came up in his early years as a world driving champion, driving nothing but road racing. It's funny to see him now as an old master of the ovals, but that's just what he is. And if he was able to win today and hang on, he will have won in 11 consecutive seasons. That's an incredible
One of the big stories at the end of this race, though, is going to be fuel for all the cars that are running fast.
14 laps to go. We'll be with you all the way through the checkered flag. Brian Herta just retired from the race, handling problems. He was 16 laps behind the leader. Look at this, the Penske pit. Rick Reineman waving down there like they're standing by to hook that car up. What do they give it? About 3 seconds of fuel, Bobby?
They will have it all figured up. It's going to be 3 to 4 seconds is about all, but they've got it all figured up. Between the computers and Roger Penske's good track savvy that he's always had, they're going to do it with the least amount of time possible.
Rick Reineman called one of the IndyCar officials, looked like Bill Luchow, over.
Michael Andretti, 8 seconds behind Emerson Fittipaldi, will of course inherit the lead if he himself does not make a stop. Andretti has been unlucky in the first 2 races, put out by a collision at Miami and gear problems and finally a crash at Australia. this is one that he could conceivably inherit, despite the problems that he's had today with his left rear wheel.
In a lot of ways, Michael is due. I mean, the race that he drove at Australia was the race of his life. I mean, he was spectacular. Let's go to Jack Arute.
Well, Paul, let's update you on this stop and fuel and go thing for Team Penske. Here's what they figured out. They need to take on a little bit over 3 gallons of fuel. By the clock, and basing it upon weight and fuel flow, they need to stop and have the fuel nozzle hooked up for a minimum of 2 seconds. They'll have a wooden pole that will tap the fueler. As soon as that time is expired, he'll disconnect, and Fittipaldi will be sent on his way. So look for a 2-second stop.
And also, let's keep in mind now, the other guys are very, very close on fuel. Everybody is that's been running fast. Now, some of them will just gamble for a win, as opposed to a second place behind Fittipaldi, who's obviously the class of the field. And one of the guys that may do it is Villeneuve. Barry Green is the type of guy that could be gambling just a little bit.
But Bobby, another point, of course, is the way Jack expressed it, that Penske has blinked. That also takes some of the pressure off Michael Andretti. He could shift up into a more fuel-efficient gear. It would help him to know that Emerson was definitely making the stop.
Sam, by then, it's way too late. Believe me, if they're going to save fuel, they had started a long time ago.
Well, but they might be doing it now. I think that explains why Michael is dropping back at the rate that he is.
But the point is, it's too late to save, is what I'm trying to say. There's nothing left to save now.
On board Michael Andretti, 7 laps to go, and here is the leader, Emerson Fittipaldi. A long run. He's got to watch the speed limit here, all the way down to the far end of the pits. Jack, here he is.
He comes in, hits the marks exactly. The fuel hose is connected. 1, 2, it's away. He picks it back into gear, flips up the tires, and he's away.
Boy, John and Colin sitting there on the vent and on the fuel hose looking back. Give me the count, pull a hose.
And you know, the worst thing is back a few years, you could come in as fast as you wanted.
In that stop, though, Michael Andretti, who was slowing down a little bit, we saw him just before, got passed by this man, Robbie Gordon.
Gordon is having himself a field day. Starting back in 9th position, he has now taken the lead, sweeping by Michael Andretti while Emerson Fittipaldi pitted. So he just vaulted from 3rd to 1st in the last lap.
So Robbie Gordon, is he about to pick up his first win? Wow.
It could be. Fuel is hard decided.
Fell back to the lead.
This is the win that he has so desperately needed. He has been highly touted. There's Michael Andretti behind him, but remember, Michael is falling back, and Robbie at this point pulling ahead.
The interval is 1.79 seconds, first to second. Robbie Gordon from nowhere around Michael when Fittipaldi stopped.
Gordon, who was picked up by A.J. Foyt a couple of years ago, there's the relationship. You see it there, back to 2nd place. He had the season with A.J. Foyt last year with Walker Racing. He learned a lot. Now this.
Robbie Gordon and Michael Andretti both made their last fuel stop 82 laps ago, Jack Arute.
Well, Paul, things aren't settled with Robbie Gordon either. They've checked their telemetry, continue to. They don't know if they've got enough to go the distance. They're going to have to check on the telemetry here, and it reads out in real time, and they only have 2 laps to go.
Robbie Gordon worried about slower cars ahead of him. Now 83 laps since his last stop. The thing has got to be down to fumes for both he and Michael. Fittipaldi has fuel enough to make it to the finish, riding in 3rd place.
Now, theoretically, it just won't go that far, but they're definitely running to the bottom of the tank. This is what we were talking about earlier. Will they make it?
Can he go for this one more lap? Robbie Gordon tucks in behind Teo Fabi. Michael Andretti runs in 2nd place, trying to close. Robbie Gordon now heading for the final corners. Keeps his foot down. There may be no fuel when he gets there. Look at that! Robbie Gordon has done it. He climbed up. He fell back. He's back up. Robbie Gordon, driving for Derek Walker, becomes the 6th driver to earn his very first victory at Phoenix.
He was fastest during winter testing. He was fastest during the warm-up this morning. He is now fastest of all when it counts, the last lap.
A good gamble.
Well, they indicated that Robbie Gordon had a car set up to race. He's won here, not at a record, but a blistering 133.9 miles an hour. We'll be back to talk with him right after these messages. Robbie Gordon grabs the lead in the closing seconds of this race to take his very first IndyCar win. There he is with Jack Arute.
Well, Robbie Gordon, first of all, congratulations. But 1 year ago here, you ran out of fuel. You ran the dice so close to the vest today. Were you thinking about that in the last couple of laps?
Well, you know, I got to say, me and Derek really worked well together all day. We didn't have a radio, so I didn't know where everybody else was. And we were using hand signals on the front straightaway to adjust the car. You know, I got to give credit to the Valvoline crew. They're just awesome. I'm really excited to be with them. I'm glad they have the patience to stick with us for the second year. You know, we finally broke the ice. We're ecstatic.
Robbie, you heard so many rumors, a lot of whispers about the fact that he's fast, he's quick, but he just doesn't have the maturity or the patience. And today you had to run that kind of patient race to win.
Well, you know, I haven't had much open wheel experience, so it's been a little long learning curve. But, you know, we got the patience for the ovals now. We're really looking forward to going to Indy. We got a little momentum because I tell you, the team was down the dumps, and this is really going to help us out.
First victory for Walker Racing since they went into the two-car operation after so many times. How does it feel right now?
Oh, I'm ecstatic. You know, I mean, I was crying on the back straightaway. It's my first victory in an IndyCar. It's something I always dreamed of, and you know, Phoenix was a tough year last year. I hurt my back really bad in winter testing, and then when we lost the race, we ran out of fuel. You know, we played a fuel gamble today, and it paid off.
Well, it paid off in aces, and let's check in with Gary Gerould.
Well, the man who finishes second, but at least he finishes, is Michael Andretti, the kiss from wife Sandy. And Michael, it had to be, you had so many emotions. They couldn't make the change on the left rear with that one stop. You didn't know about fuel. Then it ends up you come down and Emerson makes the splash and go, and Robbie Gordon gets by you. How was
that
he?
for the win?
That was for the win.
Oh, I didn't even know it.
You didn't know it?
I had no idea I was in the lead, no.
You were there when Emerson had to come in to get topped off with fuel, and the crew, they didn't let you know about this?
No, they didn't. It's disappointing because I got held up with Salazar and Guerrero, and they pushed me up into the slippery stuff, and that's how Gordon got by me. Otherwise, I had no idea I was even in the lead.
Well, Robbie Gordon gets his first win, and Michael Andretti, I know, is stunned at this point. The problem with the tire, how much did it impact you, and did the handling change at all?
Well, what impacted me more was not the tire. It was more we didn't catch the yellow correct. Emerson caught it, and I didn't, and I had to go around an extra lap, and that's what put me way back in line. So there was a little mistake made there, but, you know, what can you do?
Well, on the plus side, he's able to finish and get some points. Well, he just constantly steps out of the cockpit and walks away. Jack?
Well, Emerson Fittipaldi, you rolled the dice. You thought you weren't going to have to come in to take on fuel. Then a gas and go kind of took you right out of the chances for the win.
Well, Jack, I'm very disappointed because the car was flying. I mean, I could pass anybody anytime, and the car was just beautiful. And unfortunately, we're just running a little bit short of fuel, and I have to come in. That's a shame, but we try again in Long Beach.
Taking a look, though, at the problems that this team has had, the teething problems early in the season, do you feel that this showing by you and your team puts all that to rest now? Can you focus on the rest of the season?
Well, we're the quickest today. I was dominating the race. It just happened. The strategy happened. It didn't work on our behalf. But I'm very happy that we've come back on top and we are running strong. I think that's our count and looking for Long Beach now.
What's the story about a shoemaker for the want of a shoe? I can't remember it, Paul.
Well, Fittipaldi at 169.5 miles an hour, the fastest lap of the race by a full 2 miles an hour. They're going to be looking at that Penske car, and if there's more than 3 gallons of fuel in it when they drain it out, uh-oh. That's right, in just 1 week, the Indy cars will be at Long Beach for the Toyota Grand Prix of Long Beach.
And it was last year that Long Beach launched Al Unser Jr. into his championship. It was his first win of the 8 that carried him to the championship. He desperately needs that win next week on a track that he's won 5 times on.
So the race is done. Here's the unofficial results. Waiting for posting now, but it doesn't seem like anything will really be in contest, with Robbie Gordon becoming the 213th driver to win an IndyCar race, followed by Michael and then Emerson, Paul Tracy, Jacques Villeneuve, Raul Boesel. Then Teo. Good run. We didn't see him much today, but obviously he stayed in there steady, as did Al Unser Jr., then Pruitt, Christian Fittipaldi, Gil de Fer, and Adrian Fernandez. The rest of the order: Gugelmin, Cheever, Salazar, Roberto Guerrero stuck with it, Dean Hall, Eric Bachelard, Zampedri, Brian Herta, the pole sitter, too bad. Bobby Rahal, he was the points leader, isn't anymore. Then Matsushita, Vassar, Stefan Johansson. And rounding out the field, guys out early, Lion Dyke, Andre Ribeiro, and Danny Sullivan. Let's go to Gary Gerould.
A long day, Paul, for Paul Tracy in the seat of that car. Contact with Pruett, handling problems with every stop, it seemed like. And yet, for the first time in your career, here you are now leading the IndyCar World Series of Championship points.
Well, it really feels good for the Kmart Budweiser team. We had a tough day. We started off strong, and we had a tough day. The car went bad, and we were never able to get a handle on it. And just basically the last 70 laps, we were out there just trying to stay alive and keep off the wall, and had a few close moments. And we brought it home fourth, and we're leading the championship, which is the first for me, so I'm happy for the crew.
Indeed, he should be very happy as we go to Jack Arute.
Well, Gary, the question everybody wants to know from Bryan Herta, describe your feelings when you were radioed in that you were going to get the stop-and-go penalty.
Well, I was disappointed, no question about it, but you know, the car was so good that, you know, I felt like we could come back from that wasn't going to be a major setback, and I was still really confident. But shortly thereafter, it looks like I think we broke a right rear shock, and, you know, then the car was just terrible. We tried to ride it out for a while, but, you know, it was just dangerous, so we had to stop. I'm so disappointed because the car was great. The crew did a great job. I got to thank Target and Scotch for giving me the chance to drive the car. And yeah, I'm thrilled to have my first pole and lead my first laps in IndyCar, and, you know, just hope we can do it again real soon.
He will, I'm sure. What about you, Gary Gerould? You got some more news.
Well, Scott Pruett on the podium, of course, down in Australia. He thought he was going to be there again today. This car was working so well, but the combination of a black flag and then that contact with Paul Tracy kind of summed up your day.
Yeah, it was tough. I mean, the car was beautiful. The Firestone tires were great all day long. We had good pit stops. We just two little things. Paul and I were going down in turn one. He was wanting to, you know, squeeze me down, protect his line. I was wanting to run out of room. And unfortunately, we had contact. We had to come in. But otherwise, I mean, the car was fabulous. We had enough to go all the way to the front.
I tell you, we're going to see a lot and hear a lot from Scott Pruett, Jim McGee, Pat Patrick and company. Paul?
Well, Scott Pruett, who currently sits fourth in the point standings. Day is done here at Phoenix, and Robbie Gordon becomes another first-time winner on this Magic Mile. We'll be right back. Back at Phoenix, the celebration's underway. Emerson Fittipaldi, though, loses out to the young gun, Robbie Gordon. And, of course, Michael, who did not know he was leading the race. How spectacular is that? Paul Tracy takes the points lead, followed by a three-way tie for second between Jacques Villeneuve, Scott Pruett, and Bobby Rahal. Mauricio Gugelmin drops down to fifth place, and Michael Andretti runs in sixth place. Those are the points right now. Here was the pass for the lead. Now, remember, Fittipaldi was in the pits. And look at that. Whoa, just dials right around coming onto the front stretch. In the Manufacturers Championship right now, Ford Cosworth looking solid with 60 points over Mercedes-Benz. But as we saw today, Mercedes-Benz very definitely on a charge. So we look ahead 1 week from today. We'll be with the Indy cars in Long Beach.
Robbie Gordon was third there last year at Long Beach. Maybe the ice having been broken, he can win it this year.
And Bobby, what does this say now about the Indy 500?
Well, obviously, Phoenix is always a good race. We saw one of the most exciting ones today that I've ever seen in my life. And everything that happens in Phoenix basically works at Indianapolis. Sometimes even the same shock absorbers work there. So we're going to see a fast Indy this year.
So what have we seen thus far this year? Today we get a new pole sitter. Michael's had 2 poles. We've had 3 races, 3 different winners. Jacques Villeneuve, then Paul Tracy, now Robbie Gordon with his first victory. We told you that there are many stories developing in the Indy cars this year. It has been spectacular thus far. And here on ABC, you're going to stay with us for a while for coverage of the Indy cars next week, then on to Indianapolis for the great Indy 500. I'm Paul Page for Bobby Unser, Sam Posey, Jack Arute, and Gary Gerould. We'll see you in a week at Long Beach.